Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's time to talk about Erik Haula of the Carolina Hurricanes, center left wing, one of the most added players over the last almost week. He's now on a 4-game point streak, and before that, he was still on fire. He's up 18% in ownership on Yahoo over the last day, almost like I think it's 1,200 ads today, over 2,000 ads yesterday. He's been consistently one of the most added players for about a week now, so it's only appropriate to talk about him here and go over whether or not this is sustainable. Now, we've gotten a lot of different types of questions. We've gotten, is he actually worth adding? Is he a long-term option? Is he a short-term option? What are his prospects? That's kind of the stuff we're going to cover today. And it's not so different from the Victor Olofsson video, actually. There's a few things that kind of tie in together to the two of them, but deployment is really different. That's the key difference between Erik Haula and Victor Olofsson or these other hot hands, is that Erik Haula's deployment is very, very different from the rest. So we'll start with deployment, and then we'll get into his stats. And friendly reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can get these videos before anybody else. Okay, so let's move into deployment here first and foremost. So you can see here his ownership has jumped 18%, but let's look at where he's playing. So first off, he's playing on the third line with Ryan Dzingel and Martin Necas. So I don't love that line. It's not terrible, actually. Necas has looked good. Which I'm pretty sure I'm saying Necas wrong. Again, we did a grammar school on this, but forgive me. So Ryan Dzingel on the left wing, it's the number 1 rated third line according to Corsica, which again, like I said, I wouldn't put that much weight into it, but okay, it's a good third line. And honestly, they've been producing pretty damn well. And if we go over to the power play, he's on that second power play unit, even though it's really more like the first power play unit. It's with Dzingel, Andrei Svechnikov, Dougie Hamilton, and Teuvo Teravainen. I actually really like that power play. I love Svech. I love Hamilton. And honestly, Dzingel is no slouch when it comes to the power play. And Teuvo is obviously fantastic. I like it more than this top power play unit. But it's kind of a 50-50 split at the moment, slightly. The second power play unit has been getting more time, mostly because they've actually been crushing it. And I mean, largely it's because of Dougie Hamilton crushing it. But now Erik Haula is kind of delivering as well on that second power play. So that's one thing that I don't like right from the get-go, I'll tell you, is I don't like this third line deployment for Erik Haula. It's obviously working right now, but as soon as it stops working, he's going to get third line minutes at 5-on-5, and that'll bring down a lot of things that are unsustainable with him, or a lot of things that are helping him at the moment. So deployment is the number 1 thing that for now I'm saying I'm not super high on, so keep that in mind. Now, if we go over to his actual stats here, over to our nifty sheet, he's getting more minutes than last year, almost about a minute more than last year on average. He has 7 points in 8 games played so far, so he has matched last year's point total. Congratulations to Haula. So one thing is he's shooting a lot more, and that's a really good thing. So if we take a look at his shots, he has 24 shots, only shot 26 times last year through 15 games, so his shots are way up. That's a really good sign and something you'd like to see. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with these minutes. Now, one of the things that is going to happen there is, like I was saying, if, let's say, that third line starts to slump and they start to get true third line minutes, you could see his minutes probably come down more to like all the comments are showing up. He's probably going to come down to this like 16.5-minute range, somewhere in there, right? And if that happens, we'll probably see his shooting come down a little bit. Right now, his shooting is so high, mostly because he's getting a lot of time on the power play and just time at 5-on-5 as well. So that's something to pay attention to. The other thing is that a lot of his points, pretty much all of them, 6 of his 7 are on goals, and he's shooting at 25%. That's definitely not sustainable. Obviously, he shot at 7.69% last year with the Vegas Golden Knights, so I wouldn't expect that shooting percentage to stay up, of course. I think you're looking at more of probably like a 10% or so. And it's hard to nail down exactly how much he's going to shoot this year, largely just because what happens when that deployment goes down? What if they shuffle lines? I don't really know what his shooting percentage is going to be, or his shot totals, which is what you need to get those goals. I would say Brandon thinks he's more like a 55-point guy. I would tend to agree with that. I think he has a ceiling of probably like 60 points. Right now, he's obviously on a 72-point pace. The problem there, of course, is that 72-point pace is required to have, or for that to happen, he's going to have to keep shooting at 25%, and he's just not really getting assists. And the one assist he does have is secondary. So it's one thing that I don't love. So then going over to on-ice shooting percentage, actually not terrible at 11.24%, and that's on all strengths. That on this sheet, I use all strengths for on-ice shooting percentage. So 11.24% on the power play and at even strength is actually not that bad considering how good everyone around him is shooting. If you look at Svechnikov, you look at Dougie Hamilton, with all those guys, that's actually not terrible. He's also shooting a lot on the power play, 8 shots on the power play. So he's taken 18% of all of Carolina's power play shots, which is a really good sign. So they're trusting him to shoot on the power play. And as we'll take a look in a second, I actually really like where he's getting all his shots from on the power play, which is really important. So that's a really, really good thing. And he actually only has 2 power play goals, which is a really good thing as well. And 18% on the power play actually isn't as unsustainable of a thing. Usually, I think like if you're looking at more, I think 15% I'd feel much more comfortable, but 18% really isn't that far off with only 8 shots on goal. So that's a really good sign there. And he's getting 57% of the Canes power play time, which is good. So again, remember, like I said, they're kind of doing like a 50-50 sort of thing with a little bit more to that second power play. So that's something important to note. And as I mentioned in the Victor Olofsson video, and is important as well for Erik Haula, is the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes right now have the second most power play opportunities in the league. Now, will that continue? TBD. It's hard to predict that. Brandon and I want to dig into that a little bit more, but we're not 100% positive if we can say that or not. His hits and blocks pace are exactly the same as last year, so you're not going to get many peripherals out of him, so don't expect any hits or blocks, but especially if you're in a points-only league, he could be pretty relevant. Now, moving over now to what I was saying about shots, right? So obviously, look, you can look here. His 5-on-5 width, I show this every once in a while with his threat levels, right? They're pretty much the same with him on the ice, without him on the ice. Fine. That's not that important. Whoa, it's windy out there. Now, let's take a look here at just, these are the 5-on-5 shot locations. So when they're playing at even strength, where do all of Haula's shots come from? And they tend to come from the slot and between the 2 circles. That's a good thing. That's high danger chances. And again, one of the things too is that if you've paid attention at all to fantasy hockey Twitter, or even just like hockey Twitter, you'll know that there's a little bit of a scandal in terms of the NHL saying the shot is from 10 feet out when really it was from like 2 feet out or 3 feet out. And so even though you might see this as 10 feet out right here in the middle, so this is the feet on the left, and then in the middle you can see where the shots are coming from. That may be a little bit closer. It's hard to take this. Right now, my assumption is with the way that the NHL is doing they're providing their data in terms of where shots are coming from, I push these all a little closer to the net. So they're not as far out as they seem, a little bit more. So these ones that are just outside of the crease, they're probably way closer to the crease than it seems, and they were more stuff plays off of rebounds. So he's actually getting much more dangerous opportunities than it seems. And that's a good thing, and that's part of why probably his shooting percentage is so high. If we take a look at the power plays, so I'm going to click on this graph here, the 5v4 shot location. So this is where does he shoot from on the power play. So if you take a look at that, all from the slot. And again, remember that because of the way that the NHL is providing data right now, push all these closer to the crease, and that's where his shots are coming from. So he's mostly a bumper guy. Think of Duchesne, think of Kadri and whatnot. The difference is he's actually getting a lot of shots. So you're thinking that a lot of like the Svechnikov shots, Dougie Hamilton shots, these guys who shoot on the power play, they're getting rebounds, and and the person who's getting those rebounds is Erik Haula. He's actually doing a pretty good job of that and putting a lot of shots on the net, which is a positive. And that bodes well for the future if he can continue to do that. Because if you remember, one of the things that I mentioned before is if you have a really good shooter on a power play, for example, such as, let's go to like David Pastrnak, for example, you're going to see a Jake DeBrusk get far less rebounds than if he had someone like Dougie Hamilton who tends to shoot from the point and get rebounds. Then you actually get chances to score on the power play. He only has 2 power play goals so far, but the fact that he has a lot of shots right there in the slot is promising, and I like that quite a bit, and also makes him a threat and gets shots on goal, which is part of why his shots on goal are probably higher. So all in all, I think when you take this all into account, I actually do like Erik Haula quite a bit. I picked him up for this week. Obviously, Carolina had a really good schedule this past week, which is perhaps partially why also people decided to finally bite the bullet and pick him up. I'd say that he's a pretty good short-term add at the moment. I'd definitely add him as a short-term. I wouldn't be eyeing him as a long-term. I'd eventually probably use him as a streamer spot and most likely drop him. But for now, I like him quite a bit as a short-term option, especially given how good Carolina's playing. I like what he's doing on the power play. I like where his shots are coming from. And he's not really a sell high or sell low. He's just kind of a pickup, hold for a little bit and just see what happens. I don't think I'd plan on him being a long-term ad. I just plan on him being someone who for now is going to produce well for you. And then at some point he's going to become not as worth it anymore, especially when that third line starts to get normal third line minutes. And a lot of the reason why that third line is getting more minutes is because that top line of Aho isn't producing as much. So that first, second, and third line is actually game to game kind of getting the same amount of minutes. So once that starts to normalize and you see him get true third line minutes, I think that's when you'll see his production start to fall off. So it's just one of those guys you pick up, pay attention to his deployment and what's happening minutes wise. And then once he's not worth it, you drop him for a streamer spot. But for now, pretty good ad. So there you go. Thank you for watching. Pay attention. The weekend preview is coming out today as well. Put 3 videos in a day. Can you believe it? So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.